Croissants seem like magic, but it's actually fantastic science. First, let's talk about the magic of yeast. Yeast munch on sugar, they release carbon dioxide, which is kind of like their way of burping. This CO2 fills up tiny gas holes inside each yeast cell until it bursts open and makes two new cells. Yeast doubles every 90 minutes, turning a little into a whole lot fast. Sometimes if you wait too long for your dough to rise, the yeast eat all their food and then fall asleep and deflate. Now, the flour you choose really matters when it comes to croissants. Croissant flour has 10% protein, helps create the right amount of gluten, and makes stretchy, elastic dough. The right amount of gluten gives the croissant just enough structure to hold together without being tough or chewy. Using bread flour, which has about 12% protein, would make your croissants chewy and cakey instead of light and fluffy. Using pastry flour makes croissants super soft, but they might not hold layers well. Kneading is up next. Too much can make the gluten network too tight, resulting in a tough, chewy croissant. But if you don't knead enough, the gluten won't develop enough and your croissants might fall apart. Now you'll roll the dough out into a rectangle and let it rest. Now, of course, we can't talk about croissants without talking about the magic ingredient, butter. Beat the butter and flour together until smooth. Using a spatula, smooth out into a 7 by 10 inch rectangle on parchment paper and chill. The butter used in croissants is usually European butter, which is around 80% fat. Why not just use regular butter? We need the right balance of water and fat. The steam created from the water is what actually puffs up the croissant during baking. Regular butter often has a higher water content, which can result in less crisp layers. The water can also interfere with the gluten development, affecting the overall texture. Butter might seem solid at room temp, but it's really just a tad below melting. When butter is too cold, it's hard and brittle and will just shatter when you try to stretch it, resulting in uneven layers. But when butter is too soft, it'll squeeze out of the dough instead of forming neat sheets. When the butter is at the right temperature, it forms clean, distinct layers with the dough. This unique state is called plasticity. So the ideal temperature for lamination butter is between 55 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, firm but pliable. Now, lamination involves repeatedly rolling out the dough, adding butter, folding it, and then chilling it. During this process, the butter is stretched along with the dough, creating thin sheets of butter sandwiched between layers of dough. And you want lots of layers. A typical croissant goes through 27 to 81 layers. Add your butter block to 1/2 of the rectangle dough and fold over the dough to enclose the butter. Pinch the edges so the butter won't leak out. Then fold it up into thirds like a letter. Roll it out again. Rest for at least 1 hour. Repeat that process several times. These folds create layers upon layers of flaky goodness. Now, resting the dough between laminations is important for 2 reasons. First, it lets the gluten relax, preventing shrinkage in the final baked product. Second, it gives the butter time to solidify and helps prevent it from oozing out during rolling or baking. After the croissant dough is all layered up, it needs to rest and rise one last time before baking. The ideal proofing temperature is between 78 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit. This allows for consistent rise and prevents the butter from melting prematurely. Now, to make sure your croissants are perfectly proofed, you can do what's called the jiggle test. When the dough is done rising, it should wobble like set jello. Egg wash gives dough a rich color and flavor. Just mix egg yolk with a splash of milk or cream. The proteins in the egg wash brown the croissant via the Maillard reaction. Now, brushing on too much egg wash, though, can glue the layers shut, stopping proper rise during baking. And if you only use egg yolk, you'll get a deep amber color. If you use whole eggs, you'll get a golden shine. And if you use just the egg whites, the croissant will have a pale matte finish. Croissants are usually baked between 375 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this high temperature creates lift before the butter has a chance to fully melt. Now, as the croissants bake, the sugars in the butter caramelize, adding nutty undertones to the crust. Inside the oven, steam trapped between the layers inflates the flaky pockets before escaping, creating those iconic holes. The first 10 minutes of baking, the dough undergoes something called oven spring, where gases expand rapidly, creating a honeycomb interior. Now, thanks to the gluten and butter working together, each pocket is surrounded by a thin membrane, kind of like a tiny edible balloon. I hope you enjoyed learning about the amazing science behind these golden brown delights. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.